thought this agave plant would make an interesting subject for a daily drawing practice session. It certainly is challenging in the detail it has and the way we're seeing the detail, this ball of long fleshy spikes, sword-like spikes with small thorns down the sides coming at us or away from us in 360 degrees almost, it seems. So while the individual shapes are relatively simple, the challenge is going to be to draw them in a way that they look like they're a burst coming out at us from all directions. And as part of that, some hatching is going to be probably essential to help create clarity with what we're looking at. And yet, this is a sketch, not a detailed drawing. So how can we add that hatching detail and keep this still a brisk looking drawing, and also one that doesn't take too much time to do? Now, can I say it took me the full 10 minutes to outline the two main plants here, with some hatching on one of them, but that hatching was really more just so that I could start to visualize what was happening when I drew it, and sometimes to help me keep track of what leaf was what. Are they called leaves on a plant such as this? I don't know. But we do have a lot of these in Australia. They seem to grow rather well in our climate. I think, however, they're native to Mexico originally. And I'm not worried too much about using the hatching to create too much of a sense of three dimension, because that's probably a little bit too much detail that I've got time for. But at this point, I'm just trying to establish which ones are what. Now, the other thing that I think is important to do is to get the overall shape, this somewhat elongated, spherical, almost spherical shape. And you'll notice that what I often do is I'll put a dot where one of these leaves is going to end in its point. And that lets me just get a better look at what's happening. And it's easier to put those dots in the right spot than to start a line at the base and hope I stop it at the right place. It's really easy to finish it too soon or to go too far. But if I start at the top from my dot and go down towards the base, then it's not going to be any longer or any shorter than I've already predetermined. Now, these first leaves I'm drawing are certainly the slowest. The pace does pick up as I both become more confident with the shapes I'm drawing and establish more reference points. And I am trying to approximately, as much as I can in the circumstances, draw the leaves I'm actually seeing. I'm not making them up, but I'm quite happy to go along with the fact that I'm not going to be precise enough with all of them that they'll either all fit in or have the spacing that's in the reference if I try and fit them all in. So I am allowing myself a fair bit of flexibility. What I don't want is I don't want them to all look perfect, perfectly spaced in a perfect sphere or in a perfect elongated sphere. I want some randomness. I want some variety in the way they come out. Some of them perhaps bending over. Some of them looking closer together with the angle we're looking from. So larger gaps between some and 2 or 3 overlapping at once. These are the things that I want to capture. And we actually have to work hard to not fill in all the gaps when we have an object such as this, but to leave the sorts of irregularities that help create a sense of realism. And it only takes a moment's distraction to suddenly put something in a spot that we were keeping empty to create a random effect. I've done it so many times and it's pretty annoying. And some of these leaves, depending how we see them, can look quite different. I'm using a 0.2 Copic pen, multi-liner pen. And if you're finding this interesting and this series interesting, please hit the like button for me. That helps me out, and I would love to hear your experience of this series in the comments. What sort of subjects do you find most helpful? Because there have been much more variety in what I've drawn in this series than I would normally do in my videos. And I find with a smaller video, a shorter video, and a less intense purpose in them, that's a lot more possible. Now, this is a very busy scene. There is a lot happening just with the plants, because I want to draw not just the large agave plant in front, the bluey greeny one, but also the more greeny one, smaller one in front, just on the slope. And I'm not sure if it's the same type of plant and just a juvenile form, which perhaps is more of a green colour than when it grows larger, or whether it's a totally different one. But they certainly have enormous flower stems that go up, I don't know, 2 to 3 meters, maybe even more, maybe even 3.5 meters. I've seen them from these plants. So now you can see I'm starting to position this smaller one in front, and I start with where it most overlaps, where it comes closest to the one behind, because I can't draw the lowest leaves on that first plant until I position the ones that are going to be in front of it. Again, this is where we need to just be being strategic in our thinking and not just rushing it and thinking, oh, I know what's going to come here. And in a sense, drawing some leaves there that aren't in the reference at all, because we've stopped looking at the reference and we've started to draw it from our imagination. Now, that's fine if that's what we want to do. But if we're trying to reasonably accurately copy the composition in the photo reference, then it's not going to work so well. What tends to happen when we start to draw from our imagination, when we're actually using a reference, is that we end up compromising the composition. We end up compromising the objects, because we end up simplifying them somewhat, making them more generic, and having them interact with each other in a less dynamic way. Because we don't remember all those things, or we don't create them in our mind when we're not looking back and forth from the reference. And so we end up with something that's less than the possibilities that copying the reference more closely would have allowed us to do. So with this smaller one, I think it's easier to see the extent to which I'm both trying to generally copy the plant, the shape of the smaller agave plant, but also feeling free to not be absolutely bound with having to get it too exact. We are still in the real time at the moment, and there's a bit more of that to go. And then when we speed up, we're actually going to speed up to it's double time times time and a half. Oh, I should have paid more attention in maths at school. Whatever double time times time and a half is what we're doing. This took me 19 minutes to do in real time, but I did spend more time doing the hatching. If you really do just have 10 minutes, although I don't normally recommend splitting drawings into smaller sessions, it probably does split halfway between the outline in this and doing the hatching in terms of equal time for each. And I don't think there'd be a lot of important momentum that's lost, actually changing from one kind of major stage of the drawing into the second one with a gap in between. Generally though, I think there's an awful lot to lose when we don't finish a drawing in one session. There is a momentum, there is a rhythm. I keep thinking I should do a video about the rhythm of a drawing, because I find it tremendously important and tremendously helpful. And I think a lot of my drawings end up looking the way they do, as effective as they do, because in the second half, or even the final quarter, the momentum brings a lot of things together that are all in my head, that guide me and direct me with what marks I need to put and where, how to make final adjustments, where to push things out a bit, or try and create a focus somewhere else, or even sometimes add elements that aren't in it at that stage. Plus, it's the fun time because in lots of ways the pressure is off. The main risks are usually drawn by then, and so it's when I start to enjoy. Of course, we do need to make sure we know when to stop putting ink on the paper. That is the other challenge. So now there are some different plants which aren't grasses. There's some sort of tropical orchid plant that we have on the lower left side of the agave. But it being the middle of winter, not that long past, only a couple of weeks past the shortest day, that there's not much flowering around at the moment. And now we are going to slip into double time times time and a half. So this is something less than 4 times. So if you want to see this slower, you can use that cog icon and you can reduce the speed of the video to half speed or even a quarter speed and bring it back to real time. And while that will obviously affect the voiceover as well, you can either turn it off if you want or find that you can actually still understand what's being said. It's just that I'm either growling or sounding like a chipmunk when I say it. With all this hatching now, I have to work out where I'm going to put the very black bits because they are going to be important for helping to make clear the structure of what we're looking at. Exactly how these leaves join onto a central core that goes down and how they come out from it. And that's fairly important. We do want to create a sense of the shadows because they give validity to the overall form. They catch the light as the light would be caught with the sun in this angle, with this shape, that we know intuitively is credible and that helps to define what we're looking at. So we want to have enough of that with our hatching and with just the straight colouring in those small areas in the very centre of the base of the plants as we can manage. But at this stage now, in the most detailed parts, I'm starting to slip into creating the effect of the detail. I'm not so much trying to make sure every line joins up in a rational way, that the shadow's in a spot that's, strictly speaking, actually having a shadow cast on it. I'm more concerned that I'm creating the visual distinctiveness of the sorts of dark shapes and line directions that we have in our reference. Because when someone looks at this, they're not going to be following every line and tracing it back to where it's going. They're going to be looking at the overall effect of light and dark, of shadows, of line direction. And so that's what I want to focus on at this point. Because one of the problems with falling into the habit of drawing too much detail in any part of a drawing is then we don't know where to stop. And before we know it, we've drawn an awful lot in excruciating detail that ends up often becoming more and more distorted or unnatural looking as we try and fit more and more of it in. So at some point, I almost usually consciously disconnect from trying to draw exactly and embrace the fact that I'm from now on drawing the effect of the detail. And I think this is it. What do you think? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. You'll find this photo, of course, on my channel community page, so why not have a go drawing this Mexican agave plant? It's a great subject. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun, and I'll see you next video. Bye.